The 4-Hour Work Week is the step-by-step blueprint to free yourself from the shackles of a corporate job, create a business to fund the lifestyle of your dreams, and live life like a millionaire without actually having to be one. The 4-Hour Work Week is not a book about saving, early retirement, or finding your dream job. It is about freeing up your time and automating income, a guide to living the life of a millionaire without having $1 million in your bank account. The 4-Hour Work Week aims to give you more time and more mobility, which are two of the defining attributes of what Ferris refers to as the new rich. The new rich have abandoned the deferred life plan to create luxury lifestyles in the here and now, and Ferris argues that you can too. So watch this video until the end and get ready to find out how to achieve this. Most people will tell you that there are only two kinds of people in this world, the poor and the rich. The poor work from 9 to 5, retire at 62, live in the meantime and dream of becoming rich. The rich, on the other hand, have yachts and villas, butlers and ski chalets, and rub cocoa butter on their bellies in a Hawaiian hammock while listening to the waves rhythmically lapping against the deck of their thatched roof bungalows. At the beginning of the 4-Hour Work Week, Ferris introduces us to a third group of people, one of the most attention-grabbing creations of the 21st century. He refers to these new kids on the block as the new rich and describes them as the in-between kind. In general, even though the new rich have only slightly more money than the poor, they live lives even better than the rich as far as quality is concerned. To become part of the new rich, Ferris puts forward a set of strategies to follow that spell out the acronym DEAL. The book looks at each of the following in turn. D is for definition. Turns misguided common sense on its head and instead introduces new rules and objectives. E is for elimination. This step argues for the elimination of the concept of time management. A is for automation. Looks at putting your cash flow on autopilot. L is for liberation. Not necessarily about cheap traveling. It's about being free from the binds that keep you tied to a single location. This one is my personal favorite. Since you are still here and are perhaps interested in gaining more control of your life and time, it is obvious to me that at some point in your life, you would have considered giving up your 9 to 5 job and freeing up your time to focus on other things that you find more fulfilling. You are not alone. Most of us working as corporate employees have toyed with the idea at some point in our lives. What stops us from actually going through with quitting our job is a long list of fear-induced what-ifs. It is these what-ifs that the fear-setting exercise aims to address and resolve. What is fear setting? Fear setting is a structured reflection exercise used to help you see decisions more clearly when fear is holding you back and distorting your thinking. The term was inspired by the Stoic philosopher Seneca, who famously said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." To explain a bit more about how the principles of this exercise came to be, let me tell you the story of Tim Ferriss and the company he founded called Brain Quicken. In 2004, Tim Ferriss was making $70,000 a month from his first business, Brain Quicken. On paper, this venture was killing it, but in reality, the business was killing him. Although Ferriss built Brain Quicken from the ground up, some critical flaws in the business made it a bottleneck for many workflows. To keep pace with the demands of his business, Ferriss was self-medicating, using stimulants to get going and depressants to wind down for sleep. While working non-stop 14-plus hour days, it became clear he had pushed himself far past his limits. It was a disaster, Ferriss explains. I felt completely trapped. It was no longer a matter of if he needed to make a change, but that he needed to make one. After much deliberation, Ferriss devised a plan, a month-long trip to London where he could stay with a friend and get a change of scenery. While away, he'd either be able to remove himself from the business or he'd just shut the whole thing down. But when the business relied so heavily on his time and energy each day, how would this change even be possible? How could he even afford to take a trip like this? Fear of what might go wrong locked Ferris in a state of paralysis. as Brain Quicken continued to drive him into the ground. Fortunately, with the help of some Stoic philosophy principles and a reflective exercise, which he later termed fear setting, Ferris was able to overcome his decision paralysis and take the trip. This turned out to be a good move as he was able to redesign the business to minimize his involvement and extend this 1 month trip into a year-and-a-half jaunt around the world, forming the basis for his best selling book, The 4-Hour Workweek. Now that you have heard Ferris's story, can you think of how many times has the fear of what might happen prevented you from taking action on something you wanted to do? Maybe you wanted to ask for a raise, ask someone out, or quit your job to start a company. In these situations, the mind goes into self protection mode and turns into an excuse generating machine. I might get rejected. I might fall behind and not be able to catch up. It probably wouldn't be that great. I should just keep doing what I'm doing. Fear tends to warp your thinking, causing you to exaggerate the potential negative consequences of taking action, understate the potential positive results of taking action, and ignoring the cost of inaction. Ferris says fear comes in many forms, and we usually don't call it by its four-letter name. Fear itself is quite fear inducing. Most intelligent people in the world dress it up as something else: optimistic denial. Mark Twain once famously remarked, I am an old man and have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened. Fortunately, when you stay aware of the fact that fear distorts your thinking, it gives you the opportunity to act with intention. One way to do this is with Ferris's fear setting exercise, which I am now going to explain. If you are nervous about making the jump or simply putting it off out of fear of the unknown, here's your antidote. Write down your answers to each of the following questions in a notebook that you can go through again. Bear in mind that thinking a lot will not prove as fruitful or as prolific as simply brain vomiting on the page. Write and do not edit. Aim for volume. Spend a few minutes on each answer. Question number 1. Define your nightmare. The absolute worst that could happen if you did what you're considering. What doubt, fears, and what ifs pop up as you consider the big changes you can or need to make? Envision them in painstaking detail. Would it be the end of your life? What would be the permanent impact, if any, on a scale of 1 to 10? Are these things really permanent? How likely do you think it is that they would actually happen? Question number 2. What steps could you take to repair the damage or get things back on the upswing, even if temporarily? Chances are it's easier than you imagine. How could you get things back under control? Question number 3. What are the outcomes or benefits, both temporary and permanent, of more probable scenarios? Now that you've defined the nightmare, what are the more probable or definite positive outcomes, whether internal, confidence and self-esteem, etc., or external? What would the impact of these more likely outcomes be on a scale of 1 to 10? How likely is it that you could produce at least a moderately good outcome? Have less intelligent people done this before and pulled it off? Question number 4. If you were fired from your job today, what would you do to get things under financial control? Imagine this scenario and run through questions 1 to 3. If you quit your job to test other options, how could you later get back on the same career track if you absolutely had to? Question number 5. What are you putting off out of fear? Usually, what we most fear doing is what we most need to do. That phone call, that conversation, whatever the action might be, it is fear of unknown outcomes that prevents us from doing what we need to do. Define the worst case, accept it, and do it. I'll repeat something you might consider tattooing on your forehead. What we fear doing most is usually what we most need to do. As I have heard said, a person's success in life can usually be measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations he or she is willing to have. Resolve to do one thing every day that you fear. I got into this habit by attempting to contact celebrities and famous people for advice. So says Tim Ferriss. What is it costing you, financially, emotionally, and physically, to postpone action? Don't only evaluate the potential downside of action. It is equally important to measure the atrocious cost of inaction. If you don't pursue those things that excite you, where will you be in 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years? How will you feel having allowed circumstance to impose itself upon you and having allowed 10 more years of your finite life to pass doing what you know will not fulfill you? If you telescope out 10 years and know with 100% certainty that it is a path of disappointment and regret, and if we define risk as the likelihood of an irreversible negative outcome, inaction is the greatest risk of all. Question number 7. What are you waiting for? If you cannot answer this without resorting to the previously rejected concept of good timing, the answer is simple. You're afraid, just like the rest of the world. Measure the cost of inaction, realize the unlikelihood and repairability of most missteps, and develop the most important habit of those who excel and enjoy doing so: action. Once you write down the answers to these questions and go through them in detail, it will start to get clearer and clearer that most of your fears of worst case scenarios have been exaggerated to the point that in your head, the reality of your situation has started to appear far worse than it actually is. This fear of what might happen if you were to quit your 9 to 5 and focus on other endeavors has paralyzed you into being unable to take constructive action to actively change your situation, no matter how frustrating you find it on a day to day basis. One of my favorite quotes of Tim Ferriss from this book is: most people who avoid quitting their jobs entertain the thought that their course will improve with time or increases in income. This seems valid and is a tempting hallucination when a job is boring or uninspiring instead of pure hell. Pure hell forces action, but anything less can be endured with enough clever rationalization. Put simply, this means that when you are really, truly sick of something, you will get up and take action to change your situation. And until that time, you might keep making excuses to avoid changing your current situation. Often, we tend to become so comfortable in a messy situation that it seems easier to bear it rather than to take action, as the fear of an even more unbearable situation on the other side of said action stops us from moving to change things. Ask yourself this: do you really think your situation at work will improve, or is this just wishful thinking and an excuse for inaction? If you were confident in improvement, would you really be questioning things the way you are and be watching this video? Are you better off today than you were 1 year ago, 1 month ago, or even 1 week ago? If not, please know that things will not improve by themselves. If you are kidding yourself, it is time to stop and plan for a jump. Barring any James Dean ending, your life is going to be long. 9 to 5 for your working lifetime of 40 to 50 years is a long time if the rescue doesn't come. About 500 months of solid work. So power through the fear setting exercise and understand that it's time to cut your losses. Get rid of your fears and start working on making time for the things and people that are actually important in your life and that probably make it worth living. Thanks a lot for watching this till the end. I really hope this helps you change the things you most want to about your life. If you liked what this video has to say, I request you to like it and share it with anyone who might